I'm excited to announce I'm going to be offering one person in Optimize Your Body audience 6 months of free coaching. Free coaching for 6 months. One lucky winner for the Optimize Your Body Scholarship. I've never offered this before, and this is my way of giving back. You guys have really helped us grow. You've helped us reach more people and have a bigger impact. And for that, I really appreciate you, right? So this is a huge opportunity, and all you've got to do is click the link in the show notes. There's one link in the show notes, and the winner is going to be selected based on why it's important to you and what it means to you to really level up over the next 6 months and become the winner, to be coached by me. Do you understand how much of an opportunity this is for you, my friend, right? So do not miss this. This is golden. Simply click the one link, OYB Scholarship, which is in the show notes. Answer the couple of questions, and I'll be selecting the winner this week. Don't miss out. Enjoy the episode. Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Optimize Your Body podcast. And I'm going to be doing a Q&A today from the audience. So if you want to ask any questions, best thing to do is just DM me on Instagram, ladies and gents, at Martin Silva Fitness. I keep it very kind of simple. People DM me and I get loads of different questions and I answer them on the podcast. So just DM me on there if you have any questions. The more detail, the better. So let's get stuck in, ladies and gents. So basically the first question I've got here is, I'm going to get straight into it today, no messing around, right? So the first question is relating to skinny fat. Now, I'm sure in the audience, you may be able to relate to this. It's a common problem that I see, right? People, when I chat to them or they ask about coaching or they ask me questions about my content, they're like, you should do something on skinny fat. So I did a post and now I'm going to do a question here, right? So they've said, how do I overcome a skinny fat body? My body has always been this way. I started lifting weights consistently a year ago and I've seen some good gains, but I'm still skinny fat. Any advice? So firstly, genetics, ladies and gents, do play a big part. We can't deny that, right? If you're skinny fat, what they mean is essentially you haven't got much muscle on your body, so you're skinny, you haven't got much width to your shoulders, and essentially you're probably carrying a bit too much stubborn body fat around the stomach, right? This is generally what skinny fat is, right? You've got fat in the wrong areas and not enough muscle in the right areas, if you like. For guys, that's obviously width on the shoulders. For females, it's glutes, right? It's glutes and hips, right? And obviously shoulders and lats a little bit as well to make the waist look smaller. But obviously what men find attractive in women is the waist to hip ratio. What women find attractive in guys is the waist to shoulder ratio, right? So genetics plays a part in that. And that is going to obviously have some limitations, but I don't really buy into it. Now, the way I look at it is genetics loads the gun when it comes to luck and results, like muscle building genetics, for example. I've got great muscle building genetics, but I'm also really skinny by nature. I was really slender. And that was what got me into lifting because I was so skinny and, you know, a little bit insecure and stuff like that, right? Tall and skinny. So I've been lifting weights for 20 years though, right? So I built a bunch of muscle simply because of the time I put in, and I do have great muscle building genetics. So that loads the gun, right? Genetics. But what pulls the trigger is going to be hard work and consistency, right? So I just want to clarify that first. So what I'd like to touch on first is the first thing you need to do, quite simply, is you said you've been lifting weights for a year. You need to put more time into lifting weights, essentially, right? So I know it's hard. Sounds like you're being really disciplined and consistent, like over the last year, lifting weights. But you actually need to be more patient and actually just put more time in. As I say, I've been doing this for 20 years. And yes, I've got a great deal of muscle on my body, but that's 20 years of consistency. 1 year is good. What I say is, in the grand scheme of your life, 1 year is a foundation, really. You've built a pretty good foundation if you've been consistently doing it for a year. When you get to the 2-3 year mark, that's when you really start seeing significant results. But yeah, I looked at a study recently, and I think they found that with guys, for example, people don't build as much muscle as what people make out. So with guys, for example, it was on average the most amount of muscle you would build in a 5-year period was something like, was it 8 pounds? It was around about like something like 5 to 8 pounds a year or something around there. You can't quote me on that, but it was around about 5 to 8 pounds of muscle a year at most, right? That's how much people are going to build at most, top end. So it actually takes a long time to build muscle. It doesn't happen fast. It's not an easy feat. So if you're skinny fat, you simply, number one, need to put more time into it. But number two, again, you're not going to be getting the results that you want if you're not eating enough food, right? Most people simply don't consistently eat in a calorie surplus or eat enough food to actually build muscle. You know, if you're not eating more than your body's burning, slightly more anyway, then your body's not going to build muscle. It's just science. It's just the law of thermodynamics. It's not going to happen. So You need to be eating enough. You need to be eating at least 5 to 15% more calories than your maintenance calories. So let's say for you to maintain weight, you figure that your maintenance calories are 2,000 calories, then you need to eat at least 100 calories to 300 calories on top of that. So 2,001 to 2,300 calories a day consistently, on average, a day, to actually build muscle, right? You can't build muscle unless you're actually eating enough calories, and it needs to be 5 to 15% on top of your surplus. So regardless of skinny fat, genetics, all that kind of stuff, the same rules apply to everyone, ladies and gents. It is actually very simple on paper. It's not complicated. So that's number one, eating enough. Number two is, are you actually lifting weights properly, right? And appropriately? Are you doing it in a way where you're going to build maximum muscle? Or are you, number one, like a lot of people, overtraining, doing too much volume? Are you a cortisol junkie? I like to call it, right? Because a lot of people, they train because they like to train hard and sweat and pump, but they're not actually doing it smart. So they're not following a proper program. It's not appropriate. I always use that word. It needs to be appropriate to what your body can manage. So to your training history, right? So when I build a program for clients, for example, how have they trained in the past? And this is a simple thing, ladies and gents, you can implement, right? To build muscle or get out of the skinny fat phase, is whatever you're not doing is what's going to work. The body thrives off novelty. Let's just say, this is going to take me into another question, the next one. You've never lifted heavy weights. You've never done a strength training phase, right? Where you focused on kind of doing a lower rep range, let's say, I don't know, 2 to 6 rep range, and just literally focusing on getting stronger week on week, lifting more weight, right? You've never actually focused on that. And guess what? You're going to get a great response from that. And what I do find is, females in particular, they're kind of afraid of lifting heavy. They think they're going to get big and muscular. Females in particular, they've never done it. But male or female, doesn't matter. If you've never done that, or let's just say you've never done time under tension training, right? Where you're doing slow tempo reps, 3 seconds on the negative portion, right? So on the lower end portion of each rep, it's like 3 seconds. Slow, painful with a lighter weight. If you've never done that, guess what? You're going to build muscle. We can keep going down the list, right? But novelty is key. So whatever you haven't been doing is what you need to be doing more of. Simple as that. And watch your body respond. But if you're not eating enough calories, you're not going to build muscle, and you're going to remain skinny fat. I hate to say it. I'm just going to say it how it is, right? That's just the way it is. It's very simple. You need to be training appropriately, and you also need to be eating enough calories, right? To actually to build. And obviously goes without saying, actually having adequate protein. So eating enough protein, I always say, just give or take, just to make it a simple number, a gram of protein per pound of body weight, right? I said this last time, I'll say it again. Simple as that, right? Another thing I'd like to touch on is, you've got to remember, like, metabolically obese is actually a term now. It's actually dangerous, I think, when someone's skinny fat. Now, this person's lifting weights, so you're going to be good, right? Because you're reversing a lot of the issues that come in terms of insulin resistance and diabetes, or combating it anyway, by getting stronger and building muscle. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but metabolically obese, people who are skinny fat, like skinny, for example, right? Crazy stats. Diabetes, right? 40% of people who contract type 2 diabetes are actually not overweight, right? So they might not look overweight to the invisible eye, but what's going on internally, visceral fat in particular, the internal fat around their organs, is not good. So they end up insulin resistant. And then when you're insulin resistant or pre-diabetic for a period of time, generally around about 3 years, when you're in the pre-diabetic range with your insulin and blood sugar levels and everything else, then it converts into full-blown type 2 diabetes, right? So remember that little stat, right? There's a lot of people who are skinny fat and they don't lift weights at all and do any strength training. And actually 40%, can you believe, listen to that stat, 40% of people who get diabetes are not overweight. So that's dangerous. I would say, as long as, if you're overweight and you can see the fat, at least you can see it and you can do something about it. So it's kind of more of a dangerous place to be. Anyway, so that's just one more thing on that. Another thing is, don't overdo cardio. Of course, you need to be, getting your body into a surplus of calories at all costs and building muscle. And you need to do it for a long period of time. Rome wasn't built in a day, ladies and gents, right? Next question. I want to build muscle and improve my physique, especially my glutes and abs. This is a female writing this in. But I also want to focus on hitting a PB on my deadlift, squat, and bench press over the next three to 6 months. Can I achieve both goals? The short answer is yes. And secondly, I love to say, I love so many females lifting hard and heavy and trying to hit PBs, and females doing bench press. I love that. You never would have seen that a long time ago, right? Or even like up to like 10 years ago, you never would have seen that. Love it. It's amazing. So yes, you can. So like going back to what I said before, well, basically strength training, right? When you do low reps, let's just say you're focusing on doing like a 1 to 4 rep range where you're just doing 1 rep on every set, right? Like literally, like on your deadlift and or the deadlift, your squat, your bench press, your overhead press, or your bent over rows. You know those compound movements which work more than one muscle group. If you were doing like 1 rep, for example, or you were doing twos and let's say you were doing doubles, like 2 reps or 3 reps, hard and heavy, you actually it's hypertrophy, right? It's another way of building muscle, doing strength training. It's called myofibril hypertrophy. It's a different, it gives you a bit of a different look as well when you do heavy weights and you focus on building muscle. It makes you look kind of more dense. I'm going to do a little flex on the camera here now. I'm such a bloody narcissist, right? But my muscles have gone way more dense lately and like kind of like more just solid. And that's why, because I've just come off the back of a heavy lifting phase. And that's what happens. Your muscles look more dense and you actually get more muscle fibers when you do heavy lifting. You actually get, again, myofibril hypertrophy, your muscle fibers increase. And when you're doing like 8 to 12 rep range, your muscle fibers kind of get thicker and stronger, right? So anyway, yes, you can. But what you're going to look at with lifting heavy is its demand on the body. So you actually need more recovery, right? It's very stressful on the body lifting heavy weights. It takes a lot out of your immune system and nervous system. So you need to make sure you have an adequate recovery. What I would say, what works really, really well if you're lifting heavy is doing band sessions on the days in between. Get the rubber bands out. I'm talking the long bands with handles on the end, right? Do you know what? Forget about me explaining this. I'll just give you the program. I'll just give you a 9 week. I'll give you the 9 week Build Your Best Body program, which I designed a while back, which people still get life-changing results with. It's a game-changing program. I'll send it over to you, right? Because I really appreciate everyone who listens to this audience. Pause this now. Drop me a DM on Instagram at Martin Silva Fitness. Drop me a DM and I'll ping it over to you. I'll send you the link, no problem. Or just give me an email, admin@optimizeyourbody.com, and I'll send you over the program rather than me explaining it here. And watch what happens to your gains. And yes, you will be lifting heavy for a phase on this program, and you'll be utilizing the bands on recovery days, and it'll accelerate growth, recovery, and everything in between, basically. So you absolutely can. You can develop your glutes. You know, when you're doing low rep range, let's say you're doing 2 to 4 reps, for example, on hip thrusts, barbell hip thrusts, or deadlifts, or squats, or lunges, those kind of movements. Naturally, your glutes are going to grow from doing that, from lifting heavy. You're actually going to build muscle. And with your abs, you mentioned about your abs, you want to focus on them. That's going to be a case of developing your abs and, you know, lifting heavy, you know, doing like you would on any other body part, basically using weight for your abs. So once you get good at doing body weight sit-ups, for example, or decline sit-ups, get a plate, right? Like a weight, and start using weight, because people treat abs like they do loads of crunches and everything else, but you've got to treat it like any other body part. You've got to develop your abs and it makes them more prominent. But obviously, when it comes to abs, you are going to have to lose fat. And that doesn't work when you're looking to build muscle and get stronger. They're just opposite things, right? So if you want to build muscle and get stronger, you're going to have to eat enough calories to get the big lifts in, right? So you don't want to be focused on getting shredded abs, but you can still develop your abs on that journey. And again, I'll send that program to you. So just drop me a DM or an email. But yeah, you know, to hit PBs as well, all you've got to do is make sure you're following a proper program, right? So over the next 3 to 6 months, do those compound lifts. You know, do your deadlifts one day, do your squats on another day. Give it at least a day in between each one when you're doing heavy deadlifts or squats. You could do your bench press on a squat day, for example, on the same day as a squat day. On your deadlift day, you could do it like an overhead shoulder press. So you might as well just do the whole body and do all those big body parts, because you're going to build muscle all over then anyway. And providing you get an adequate recovery and everything else, you're going to hit PBs. And you're gonna really build muscle as well. But again, you've got to cycle it. You got to periodize. I can never pronounce that word. You got to have different phases basically on your program, right? So if you're just constantly doing heavy weights, you're gonna need to switch it up and do higher reps, or at least have a deload week or something like that, right? But yeah, just get that program, ladies and gents. I'm happy to give it to you. So just drop me a DM or send me an email. So next question. I've been tracking my calories for 3 years, other than a few weeks off here and there on holidays. I've lost 45 pounds. Wow, that's incredible. Well done. Amazing. And I've transformed my life within this time, but I'm stuck at the same weight and my body seems to have plateaued for the past 6 to 9 months. Any suggestions? So first and foremost, congratulations again, right? This is incredible that you've lost 45 pounds over the last 2 years. So this is a great question, because I see this problem time and time again. And it goes back to what I talk about a lot, is being stuck in the restrictive diet mentality. So this person has had some tremendous results. But again, if the same thing that got you these results is the same thing that's going to keep you stuck, right? Being restrictive and cutting back on calories has obviously enabled you to lose 45 pounds, which is great. But that's also going to keep you stuck at the same weight. And not only that, it's not just about weight, you're going to store fat as well. Because it gets to a point where the body's like, okay, it's all about survival. You've been cutting back my calories for like 3 years now and restricting us. We need to slow down. Metabolism goes, okay, we need to get more efficient with calories and just slow down and store some fat, right? Simple as that. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to overcome this psychological barrier. This is much easier said than done. This is actually what I find myself helping a big kind of percentage of my clients with is they've got some good results. They've lost weight on their own, and then they've just got stuck. And not only got stuck, they've actually started gaining fat. And this can happen. I'm not trying to scare you, but this does happen if you just keep doing the same thing. Obviously, definition of insanity, right, is doing the same thing and getting different results. What happens then is, your metabolism is just going to stay at a slow rate, and you're just going to end up gaining fat if you don't change up what you're doing. So how do you overcome this? First and foremost, you need to probably stop tracking as meticulously. If you've been tracking for 3 years, maybe cycle your tracking. So track, 5 days a week and have 2 days off, or, track for a month, have a month off, and focus on intuitive eating. And you must be in a place now where if you've dropped that much weight and you've tracked for 3 years, you're probably eating pretty damn good. So coming away from that and just being intuitive when you're eating, you're going to know by eye now what, portion sizes and all that kind of stuff. You obviously know now, like, how much calories are in certain foods. Roughly, you're going to have an estimation of that. So coming away from that would be a good thing for you. But also going back to what I said, novelty. You're going to need to switch up. You're going to have to send a different signal. At the moment, the signal your body's getting is, okay, we're not eating many calories. You're not giving me a reason to speed up. Your metabolism is saying, okay, you're not giving me a reason to speed up and elevate and burn more calories. So yeah, we'll just stay here, basically. Simple. We'll just survive and crack on. That's all it's thinking, right? So what you need to do is you need to basically send a strength signal. So how do you do that? Strength training, funny enough. But going back to what I said, you need to do that in a way where it's appropriate, and you need to be having enough protein, high protein. And again, you need to be eating enough calories to basically partition calories into build a muscle, right? But that's a big challenge. It's hard to do. It's a big psychological barrier because, this person has actually said, oh no, this is the next question, sorry, but, you're going to be terrified of gaining the weight back, right? Or you're at least going to be scared about that. And that's good because that, is going to keep you mindful, but that's also going to hold you back. So what you need to do is A, strength training, B, make sure you're having high protein and just eating enough food, period, right? But even by doing that, even by switching up your training, like, I don't know if you're doing cardio, you want to minimize cardio and focus on strength training, following a proper strength training program. Again, you can get the one I just mentioned. I'm happy to give it to you. Any of my fellow podcast listeners, I really appreciate every one of you. But also you're going to need to not track as much. You've obviously, people say obsessive. I've got obsessed. It's a good thing at times. I got obsessed with tracking. I tracked for 6 years, obviously the bodybuilding and everything else. You probably want to come away from that a bit and just focus on getting stronger. In fact, perhaps you should take a leaf. Not perhaps, actually, this, from what you said, will be a great thing. You should focus on, forget about the scales, maybe put the scales away and focus on performance, getting stronger. Focus on getting stronger in the gym and fueling your body in a way to achieve that. Focusing and having the right disciplines and structures in your lifestyle to be able to achieve muscle gain and strength gains. By the way, ladies and gents, when it comes to build a muscle, the whole pursuit of muscle is where the discipline and the beauty lies, because you have to go to bed. You have to get good enough sleep. You can't stay up all night fucking around on your phone and then expect to go and hit PBs the next day in the gym. So it's all these behaviors and habits around building muscle, which is great because then you focus on health, you focus on performance in the gym as well, getting stronger. And naturally, your body's going to look better. As you get stronger, your metabolism has to speed up. When you lift heavy weights, it puts a demand on your nervous system, like I said, and it forces your metabolism to elevate, right? Because your body goes, okay, we need more muscle. And muscle tissue is expensive. It's going to cost your body more calories to keep it on your body. So yeah, that's how I would summarize that question. I hope that was helpful. It was about 25 different answers in one. If you can take one of those out of there and implement it, then fantastic. Next question. Sorry, ladies and gents, I'm chatting quite fast today because I'm trying to burn through 5 questions here, right, in a short amount of time. And I don't want to waffle too much. I want to kind of keep it precise. So the fourth question, I lost 25 pounds over the past 4 months. Amazing. Eating strict carnivore, but now I want to focus on muscle gain to take my physique and health to the next level. I know you always talk about, and so does Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, talk about muscle being the longevity organ. I really want to focus on adding more of it to my body. I'm really worried though about reintroducing other foods, especially carbohydrates, because I'm terrified of gaining the weight back. What approach should I take? So this is actually a really good question. Again, I've coached a lot of people through this, and I've done this myself. Let me give you an example of myself. Last year, I did strict carnivore for the first time. As everyone knows, I eat an animal-based diet, and I eat carnivore-ish. I don't eat strict carnivore, right? Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But last year, I had March and October where I ate strict carnivore. So I literally, in March, I just eat mainly beef and eggs, and I had some bone broth, had some beef tallow and ghee oil, added that when I cooked my foods, but that was it. Literally strict carnivore. October, I went even stricter. I had just like beef and eggs. And then I had probably about half of the month of October where I was doing the lion diet, where I was just eating Scotch fillet steak and salt. And that's it, one meal a day. And I took it to the extreme, right? And what I noticed was, especially that month where I did the lion, it's just a massive calorie deficit for me. And I noticed this has never happened before. I noticed my libido actually dropped. That's never happened, right? And I noticed my energy wasn't as good. I wasn't as strong at the gym and everything else, et cetera, et cetera. But then what I found is when I started reintroducing carbohydrates, I noticed that it's very hard to detach. Even if I bring things in like white rice and especially fruit, which is, higher in sugar than white rice, honey, those kind of things. And then God forbid I had some coconut yogurt. That's my thing, right? Coconut yogurt and fruit and honey, right? I add them in a bowl and that's a combination of sugar and fat, right? Which tastes amazing. That's what is highly palatable foods, right? It's not like processed highly palatable foods like Ben and Jerry's, which is the perfect combination of sugar and fat. At least this is whole food, right? It's just literally coconut yogurt and fruit. But you still want to eat more and more of those foods. Remember, with carbohydrates, in nature, like as hunter-gatherers, if we saw, berries or we saw fucking an apple tree, sorry about the French, out in the wild, we would eat the shit out of it, right? We would eat the fuck out of it until it's gone. It's the primary source of energy. So it is kind of hard to detach from those foods. And we don't need carbohydrates. We can survive without them. We need protein and fats. So you have got to be careful. And this does really depend on the individual. Now, I don't know anyone who has gone strict carnivore, lost weight, started eating, fruits and potatoes or white rice, or not potatoes, because that's not in the carnivore thing, is it? Because of the, defense chemicals. Some people are fine with potatoes. I'm not. But they start eating fruit, white rice, honey, whatever. Not even white rice, fruit and honey. And then they just end up, gaining 45 pounds back and ending up obese. Like I've never seen that happen. I'm sure it does, but that's going to be a minority of people, right? But you have got to be mindful, right? Because when you bring things in like honey, for example, it's what's known as simple sugars, right? And we obviously, yes, physiologically, we get a blood sugar spike. Our blood sugar levels might go up and back down again, so we're hungry again. But that really depends on what you eat it with, right? So what I would be mindful of is just not eating carbohydrates on their own. Ladies and gents, it makes a massive difference in terms of the combinations of food that you eat, right? So if I eat now and I have my steak and rice, and I have, steak, rice, maybe some olive oil on my rice, and then I had, some fruit and honey afterwards. The blood sugar spike is going to be night and day difference. I'm not going to be hungry a few hours later. I'm going to be totally fine, right? But if I was to have like a spoonful of honey on its own, that's a different story, right? Blood sugar spike is going to be huge. You haven't got anything else to metabolize it with and break it down with and assimilate it. So that's going to make a big difference. Now, the big thing you got to focus on here, though, is the psychological element of reintroducing carbohydrates, right? Now, keep it, whole foods. Be mindful of having them on their own. So if you have them with your meal, eat your steak, your normal meals. And what I would say is bring in the low toxicity, low toxicity, right? Fruits are lower in defense chemicals than vegetables. Although I don't want to demonize vegetables, right? Some people are fine eating vegetables, but fruits have less defense chemicals in them and less kind of toxins in them, if you like, which can cause issues, immune responses with people. The top two fruits, I would say, especially if you're just going to start reintroducing things in, is avocado and berries. Berries is high in fiber, low in sugar, and high volume. You have a big bowl of berries, really low in calories, again, low in sugar, and lots of volume. You eat it, you're enjoying it because it's a big bowl, right? It's not like, when you have a couple of squares of chocolate, bang, it's gone in like a few seconds, and then you're like searching around the house for more. So berries and avocado. Obviously, avocado is like 80% fat and really low in sugar. Plus, it's going to help keep you satiated on top of the protein, right? So avocado is my best friend. I don't even look at it like a fruit. I just look at it as like a component of my meal, right? When I have my steak and eggs, for example, I always have like half an avocado in my first meal. And that generally will keep you more satiated. Again, everyone is different though. Everyone responds differently to different foods. There's so much variance from person to person. But I would say to, reintroduce those two. If you're having things like honey or other fruits, again, just make sure you're having them after your meal. Don't eat them on their own, right? That makes a big difference. And what I would do then is, as a tactical tip, is to keep any foods which are going to cause you to potentially go back to old behaviors out of the house. Don't take the piss, right? Don't start buying any processed foods or snacks and those kind of things. Just don't go back to that. Keep it single ingredient foods. Bring in some avocados and berries and see how you feel. Then perhaps you might want to bring in, some fruit, like maybe some banana and honey to have after your, even a meal. I would say to backload the carbs as well. I would have the carbs in the evening after your meal once you've had a good amount of protein. And again, the blood sugar spike's not going to be as extreme, and it'll probably help us sleep as well. Like I notice a big difference. There's some research on that as well. Carbohydrates, serotonin in the evenings. Generally you want more dopamine in the daytime. Protein and fats. And then, I don't want to say everyone should just eat protein and fats in the daytime, but I notice this works a treat for me. And then in the evening, serotonin then is relaxing, right? It keeps you relaxed, and it kind of makes you relax before bed and everything else. So yeah, that's a good idea to backload the carbs and have them in the evening. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Keeping a food journal is another option as well. So just simply writing down how you feel 30 minutes to an hour after you've eaten those foods. See if you feel like you have any cravings, or if you feel like you have any issues with your gut. Because again, you bring certain carbohydrates back in, you might notice your gut is not quite liking it. So that's kind of the advice I would give to that. But yeah, you don't want to be using the word terrified of gaining the weight back. Goes to show that actually, to be honest, I said this last time, but very few people are going to thrive from eating just, beef and eggs for the rest of their life, strict carnivore. Unless you have like real big autoimmune issues, you're going to be probably good doing that. But, it's overly restrictive on a psychological level. So, and the research is clear. And I've noticed this myself after that lesson I learned last year with going strict carnivore, and noticing that actually my sleep took a hit. My libido dropped a bit. I noticed I wasn't as strong in the gym. I know I was in a calorie deficit as well, so that alone is going to play a part in it. But carbohydrates, the research is clear in terms of performance and strength, and even recovery, and even it's kind of splitting hairs, but anabolic as well, making you more in a muscle building state. Having carbohydrates on the days that you lift weights, for example, right? So carbohydrates are good for performance for the majority of people, but you've got to be able to detach from them as well. And actually, I'm in a place now where I know I should probably do at least a week or two of strict carnivore, because I'm eating carbs every day and I feel great. But that psychological dependence, I know I would feel better, like energy wise and everything else, and even gut probably would feel better if I just had like at least a week of eating carnivore. But I love carbs and I'm back into eating my white rice, right? And my fruits. And it's hard to detach. And that's me. So just be mindful of those things. Right. I'm going to try and answer this last question. Got a few minutes left. I definitely want to answer this one. Tips for overcoming crippling anxiety. Work stress over the past year is killing me, and I need to find other ways to reduce anxiety other than training. I lift weights 3 times per week, and that's all I can fit into my schedule. I know you talk a lot about mental health. I got your email the other day when you were talking about anxiety, and it really resonated with me. Thank you. What advice can you give me? So obviously, disclaimer, I'm not a mental health expert or a therapist or anything in between. I am a transformation coach, right? And I've just coached a lot of people as a personal trainer back in the day. And I have coached a hell of a lot of people and helped them get into incredible shape physically and mentally. But what I can share with you is I know what works on a rational level, really, for anxiety, right? And I'm not a rocket scientist, and you don't need to be. So first of all, I said on this email last week, right? I had a day that this person's talking about. I had a day last week where I had horrendous anxiety, right, ladies and gents? And first of all, I want everyone to just normalize that every single person that you look up to or know, or you might put certain people on the pedestal, right? Like I look up to certain people, I've got mentors, all that kind of stuff. They all struggle with the same things: anxiety, even depression at times, procrastination, perfectionism, self-doubt, all those things. But me and mentors that I look up to have the ability to normalize it. Now, last Thursday, it was overpowering, the anxiety I had. I did a lot of things. I did walking. Spoke to my friend, and it helped. But I was coming down with something as well. That's another conversation. But what I do, my go-to is number one, walking. Movement is medicine. And daylight on top of that, right? Get out and move. You never feel worse after a walk, right? Number two is I'll speak to a friend. I actually called my friend, shout out Ian, last week. I had some stuff on my mind. I was overthinking certain things, and then that turned into anxiety and everything else. and I give him a call, and it just worked wonders. Just bouncing stuff off a like-minded man was just great. So that goes a long way. I have a call and a friend, or ideally just having a quick coffee with someone. Maybe not coffee actually, because that's going to add to the anxiety. Have a green tea, works wonders. Breathing, and this is something I'm going to implement this week and get back on top of, because I've been a bit slack on my breath work. Even just taking 6 deep breaths, right? 5 seconds, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, 6 deep breaths. Your heart rate is forced to slow down. Your nervous system will go into that rest and digest state, or it'll come out of that fight or flight state anyway, at least momentarily, right? So they're kind of my go-tos, right? But what I would say is sleep and blue light, right? Now, the number one, right, is who you surround yourself with, right? The obvious thing is, right, I don't know enough details about this person, but if you're working in an environment where you're spending most of your days, let's honest, we spend most of our time working, right? So if you're spending 8, 9, 10 hours a day working, and you, number one, don't enjoy what you do. Number two, you're sat in front of a computer screen all day. And then number three, you're working with people you don't like working with, or your boss is an asshole, right? We've all been there. Then that's an issue. And that's going to have the biggest impact on your anxiety, right? But I did notice you said this has been over the last year. So perhaps you just overworked and burnt out. But you'll need to balance things out with sleep. And what goes hand in hand with that is blue light. Ladies and gents, I've said this many a times, but I noticed this even last night, and this is something I'm going to hold myself accountable to on this podcast. I've actually talked about this on my social media. This week, last night I went to bed at 9:45 p.m. I went to sleep at 9:45 p.m., right? Up until I went to Brazil in December last year, I was going to sleep at 9:30 p.m., 9:45 p.m. And what I noticed was I felt way better. Mental health was better, energy was better, and I was just waking up energized. My aura sleep scores were better. And I came away from it. And all year I've been going to sleep at like 10:15, 10:30, staying on blue light too late. And I think that's disrupted my sleep, right? And the research is clear, like blue light, it really degrades, it drastically decreases your melatonin levels. Melatonin is important for serotonin production. It's important to fight cancer, and it's the sleep-induced hormone, right? So avoid blue light and put that laptop down tools, right? No screens. In this person's case, I would say at least 90 minutes to 2 hours before bed. Now, sometimes you're going to have to work. I get it. Invest in some blue light blocker glasses. I haven't got them in front of me now. I was going to show the YouTubers this. I got these blue light blocker glasses, which I'll put on now. I put them on like 4 hours before I go to sleep. So I'll put them on like 6 p.m. 6:30 p.m. And they've got an orange lens on them. I use Swanwick Sleep. They're the ones I use. All you got to do is remember to put them on, and that's going to block like 94% of the blue light. But you still don't want to be looking at screens at least 90 minutes before bed. You're still going to, absorb a lot of the blue light, even if you're wearing the blockers, and you're still going to be in that stress state, especially if it's work. Let's be honest, when we're on our phones or laptop, we're focusing on work, and that's going to keep us in there, keep the cortisol levels elevated. So blue light, avoid it like the plague, and that'll help your sleep quality. Dial in your sleep regularity. Circadian rhythm is the most important thing when it comes to mental health, right? Going to bed at the same time, and naturally you're going to get up at roughly the same time. And I'm going to dial that in even more myself in this week, right? And I know it works, and research is clear on this. Simply going to bed at roughly the same time, naturally you're going to get up at roughly the same time. And that's really going to help with the anxiety. Number two, get some daylight in the morning. Get outside, right? It's the most important thing for circadian rhythm and for sleep as well. Getting at least 5 to 20 minutes of daylight or sunlight in the mornings. But the other thing might just simply be like, you need a change, right? And again, I'm not a business mentor. That's not my wheelhouse yet. Maybe it will be in the future. But basically, if you're doing something you hate, right, and you hate what you do on a day-to-day basis, actually, it sounds like, you're going to be fearful of making change. And it's easy for me to say, but the reality is, if you keep going like you are, you're guaranteed to be miserable, right? Look, I'm not saying this to this person in general. I'm just saying this because this is what I know, having speaking to clients. If you're doing shit you hate all the time, you're going to have to make a change, because otherwise, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And you're going to feel, like this going forward, right? So, making a change will probably be less painful than actually continuing doing what you're doing. If there's anyone listening to this doing something they hate day to day. But yeah, look, I'm not a business mentor. I just wanted to put that out there. So, maybe a change is necessary, but yeah, look, go into some more tactical things. Obviously, yoga and breath work, doing like 5 minutes of breath work before bed even has been proven to help sleep quality and reduce cortisol levels. 5 minutes, box breathing, breathe in for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5. Once you've breathed out for 5 seconds, breathe it all the way out, hold your breath again for 5 seconds. breathe in again for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5. And once you've breathed out, hold for 5 seconds and breathe in again, right? Box breathing. So yeah, I hope that makes sense for 5 to 10 minutes. Boom. So any of those things, another big thing, right? I tell you what works wonders is ice baths. Jump in an ice bath. I was like a bit miserable the other morning. Jump in an ice bath. Fuck, you're not thinking about anything else at all. It completely shifts your attention away from all the shit that you're worrying about, all that anxiety, and you feel amazing afterwards. But yeah, walking, movement is medicine. Speaking to a friend, get around good, positive people. Positive energy will be transmitted into your body, just like, energy vampires will suck your energy. Breath work is key, even just 5 minutes before bed or 60 breaths in the daytime. Very simple stuff, ladies and gents, right? But yeah, that's what works for me. But again, I'm not a mental health expert. That's just some advice I give you based on me and advice I would give to clients. I would get them to focus on one thing. I would say, right, don't try and change all those things. What's the one thing you can do that's going to improve? Most likely going to be sleep. But everyone listening back to this, most people, that's the number one thing that most people need to work on. Come away from blue light at least 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes before bedtime. And don't go on people wake up and go on their phone. Like, honestly, it's going to ruin your sleep quality, even if you're not aware of it. It's going to deteriorate your mental health. I don't want to say deteriorate, but it's going to really have a negative effect on your mental health and anxiety. That blue light is a killer. Simple as that. Anyway, ladies and gents, if you have any questions, like I say, drop me a DM at Martin Silva Fitness or admin@optimizeyourbody.com. I will be doing another one of these either next week or the week after. And as I say, just drop me a message if you want that program, right? It'll get you great results for sure. All right, over and out.